Good morning, students. We'll start with chapter 5, that is disasters. I hope you have finished with your previous written work. If not, please start submitting as soon as possible. Now, in disasters chapter, which is chapter number 5, so when we talk about the word disaster, we use it very loosely, in a loose manner in our daily life. Even if we drop a glass of milk, we say a disaster happened. But actually, a disaster is any natural or man made causing harm to lives or infrastructure, which is called a disaster. And it generally occurs suddenly and mass destruction and causes mass destruction to life and property. For example, a flood, an earthquake, a volcanic eruption, a fire, an accident, a terrorist attack, they are all termed as disasters. And we can classify them into natural and man made disasters. Of course, natural disasters are the disasters which happen by nature. That means nature has a hand to play in it. So, natural disasters are any activity which is caused by nature and is responsible for destruction, which we term. And this activity can be an earthquake, a flood, a storm, a wildfire, or a volcanic eruption. And their impact on humanity is called a disaster. Now, generally, actually, there are two words which are there in your book also, natural hazard and natural disaster. So, anything which can cause harm and is caused by nature is put under natural hazard, and the impact of that hazard is called as a disaster. So, they are very similar terms and they are sometimes interchanged when we are talking to each other. So the first disaster which we are going to do is floods. So when the river water overflows into the surrounding land, it is called flood. That's a very simple definition and I think most of you know about it. But actually, why does that happen? So sometimes what happens is the rain is excessive. That means more amount of rain in a short period of time, which can cause floods in the rivers. Excessive heat will cause more melting of snow or glaciers. And of course, if the dam fails because of poor construction material or a earthquake which happens in that area. So, and floods are generally common in countries like China, India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, where we have perennial rivers. That means rivers which have water throughout the year. So they do carry water throughout the year, but during the rainy season, that water becomes more. It starts overflowing, and therefore a flood is caused. So, what should we do to protect ourselves from this flooding of the rivers? So, what are the safety measures which should be kept in mind? Keep a track of the water level. If you're somewhere living around near a river bank or something very close to a river, then you should keep a track of the level of the water in the river. Generally the government officers do this and they have a mark which is made, and therefore they keep a track of the level of the water and they keep warning the people around to be very very careful. Then we need to construct walls along the river bank to keep or contain the water within the bed. Construction of dams also lets less water flow downstream, and therefore rivers are in less chance of flooding. And then we have to have a pre-prepared evacuation plan which should be always ready. That means, what if flood is caused? Then what do we do? What are the ways and means we can protect ourselves? What are the ways we can save life as much as possible? So that is a pre-prepared evacuation plan. That means the government should have a plan ready at all times, even if they are taking all the precautions, but there should be a plan ready at all times. That is, if flooding happens, what will happen to the people living in that area? Where will they go? So that is called as your evacuation plan. That means the government should have measures in place that if a flood like situation occurs, the people should be moved out of that area and kept somewhere else safely so that they can come back to their places once the flood waters or the level goes down. Then the impact, of course, of a flood. What are the impacts of a flood? Positive is flood control. Flood advances slowly, so people can be forewarned. That means we can be given a warning in advance because it happens very slowly. It deposits fertile soil, benefiting the farming after the flood season is over. And in negative is, of course, loss of life, loss of infrastructure, loss of crops. And after the flood is over, there are many waterborne diseases like cholera which spreads. So, this is the negative impact of a flood. The next natural disaster which we're going to pick up is an earthquake. I think since you are living in Dehradun, most of you must have experienced this at least once. So, shaking or vibration in the earth due to collision of plates causes earthquake. So, we know that the earth is made up of big plates, and these plates are always in motion. So, when they are always in motion, they are colliding against each other, and this collision generally causes some tremors or vibrations, and these vibration and tremors cause, sometimes they are very, very of a high magnitude or of a high power, and they cause loss of life and property. And the impact, of course, see, for all disasters, impact of loss and life of property is always there. So loss of life and property. Then landslides can occur, and if landslides can occur, landslides can cause flooding, because if landslide occurs and stops the water of the river, then the water of the river stops and starts spreading in the surrounding areas, causing floods. So landslides and tsunamis can also happen. If the earthquake happens on the sea floor, then it will give rise to tsunamis, and of course fires. If the factory work is happening and the earthquake occurs, it might cause massive fires. The instrument which we use to measure the earthquake is called as a seismometer or a seismograph, and the magnitude or the strength or the power of the earthquake is measured by Richter scale. So that is your earthquake. The third disaster which we are going to cover today is drought. Now, drought is basically failure of rain for a very long period of time, and it causes acute shortage of water, and it causes failure of crops, because if there are no water, the plants will die, the crops will die, farmers will not be able to give water to their agricultural fields, so the crops will fail. Of course, loss of animal life, because when there are no water bodies around, when there are no water available to wild animals, they start dying. Then epidemics occur, a lot of diseases are caused, and over a period of time, cracks develop on land which causes infertility. That means the soil becomes infertile and is not good for cultivation later. So, what should we do? What are the safety measures which should be taken up to avoid droughts? Because they are mostly, drought is something which we can prevent from happening to a certain extent, and that is afforestation. Plant as many trees as possible. When you plant trees, it increases the water vapor content of the air, and when the water vapor content of the air increases, automatically rain falls, so we are saved from drought happening. Then there should be evacuation plan or providing adequate amount of water by the government. Now, evacuation plan means, supposing if any area is facing drought, then the people should be moved out of that area and given employment somewhere else. And or the government can do is provide adequate amount of water in the period of non-rainy years. And the fourth, which we are going to pick up as a natural disaster, is a cyclone. When winds move with great speed towards low pressure areas, it causes a lot of destruction, called a cyclone. And the area of low pressure is called as the eye of the cyclone, and the edge is called as the wall of the cyclone. I don't know how many of you must have noticed that during summers, when the summers are extreme, sometimes the wind moves in a circular motion, and the toffee wrappers and whatever is lying on the ground also moves in a circular motion with it. So that is called, that is, I mean, that is how the wind moves in a circular motion, and when it happens on a very, very large scale, we call that as a cyclone. So when a wind moves from a high pressure area to a low pressure area in a circular motion, that is what a cyclone is, and they are known by different names in different parts of the world. Like, they're called as typhoons in Pacific Ocean, they're called as hurricane in the Atlantic Ocean, they're called as cyclones in the Bay of Bengal branch of the Indian Ocean, willy willies in Australia, and of course it causes life and infrastructure damage continuously. So I have just covered the natural disasters of this chapter, and I will be sending the pics of the chapter also to you, because I don't know whether all of you have got your books by now or not, but in case the ones who still haven't got their books, they can take help from the pictures will I'll send you. And in the next video we'll cover the man-made disasters, how man can also cause mass destruction of life and property. So we'll pick it up later in the next video. Bye bye for now.